Hey YouTube, who's your piper? AKA Mark. With a rare bent pipe. It's my first briar I ever bought. Some no-name, like a basket pipe. Bought it down at Noblesville, I believe. Carmax. I believe that's in Noblesville, Indiana. Saturday evening, about 8:15, 8:30. Sun's going down. Smoking some Dorchester. I call this pipe the Gurgler. Evidently I'm a very wet smoker. It gurgles almost all the time. But this esoterica, I should have dried it out a little bit, and I didn't dry it out. This is my first pipe of the day. It's at the end of the day. Interesting anecdote to share with you. Thursday I was off of work. I had to get some cortisone shots in my shoulder and had some things to do. I was supposed to go to my youngest son's school. He's in 6th grade for it was a grandparents' day, but his grandparents weren't able to make it, so I was going to go. And went into the school. At the front of the school, and you have to sign in with your driver's license. So you scan your license and it prints out a sticker with your picture on it, and you put it on your shirt. But you have to have that set up, and I've never set that up in my kid's school because I'm rarely ever at the school during school hours because of the job I do, which will make this even funnier. So they said if you haven't set up this sign-in process with your driver's license, you need to go to the office and they'll get you set up. So I'm standing in line. Comes my turn. I hand my driver's license over. They scan it into the computer. I gotta pause this. I'm on call. I just got a couple texts I need to address. Okay, I'm back. That was my on-call partner sending me a text. Technology is a great thing until you have to rely on it. And the state of Indiana's got this idea when calls come into our hotline, they call our office, central office up in our county, and that phone is automatically routed to our cell phones, and whoever's on primary gets those calls. Well, my partner who's primary this weekend had some stuff to do and asked me to take primary during the middle of the day, so she transferred the calls over to my phone and then could not untransfer the calls, and it's kind of confusing, and it was her first time, and it's no biggie. I just transferred my phone back to her, so that means all my calls on my work phone were blowing up her phone, and I was waiting for a certain call from a hospital downstate, and so that came in while I was videoing here, that first part, so can't remember exactly where I was at. I went into the school office. I was in the school office and standing in line, got my driver's license out. They scanned it. This pipe, I think I'm done. They scanned it and the secretary had a really odd look on her face. And she looked at me a couple times and looked back at the computer, struggled for 3-4 minutes. Line kept getting bigger and I was like, okay, something's going on. She kind of hollered at the next secretary in the next office, who's the principal's secretary. I'm very good friends with the principal. My wife used to work at this school. I worked several years ago as a janitor part-time in the evening before we went overseas. I know, several of the teachers pretty well. All my kids have gone through that school. Secretary of the principal comes over, looks at the computer, doesn't say a word, does a 180, walks right into his office. I'm like, oh, this is great. Pretty soon, principal steps out. He kind of acknowledges me. He sees me standing there, and he comes over to the computer. He looks at the computer and looks up at me. And he looks at the computer again. He looks up at me and he goes. So I walk in his office and I call him by name. I said, "What's going on, man?" And he's like, "Your ID is red flagged, and you can't come into school," which is ironic because I spend a lot of time in schools for my job. Not being able to talk about my job at this point really stinks for this story, but it's pretty funny. So, I pull out my state badge and I show him my badge. I said his name. I'm like, "You know what I do, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." And he said, I know who you are. He's like, I don't have any trouble. He said, "But I can't let you into school." I'm like, "Well, what are we going to do to solve this? Because I need to get to this event." And he's like, "Go ahead and go down to the gym and we'll get it figured out." I'm like, "All right." So I go down to the gym, and of course everybody that was standing in that line has already gone through the line, and they're down at the gym. And so I find a seat on the front row of the bleachers. About 5 minutes later, the principal standing directly opposite me across the gym at the main door, and he's looking. I can tell he's looking for somebody. I know who he's looking for. So his eyes fall on me, and I kind of point to myself, and he's like, "Yeah." So I walk across the gym. They're getting ready to start this program. Walk across the gym floor, step through the door, and there's a local police department standing there, an officer. And unfortunately, I didn't know this officer. I recognized his name, but I didn't know him. And the principal says, "Hey, he needs your ID because he's going to rescan it, so everything will be okay." Not my first rodeo, I'm like, if you need to run my ID, run my ID. I gave him my ID, talked to the officer a little bit about what I do. And he at this point, you could tell he's a little confused because whatever the system's telling him is way different than what I'm telling him. So he leaves. I go back across the gym. The program started. They're handing out awards. I sit back down. Probably another 5-7 minutes go by. I look up. Here's the officer, the police officer. Now he just comes walking in the gym, and he's looking for the principal and me. So he gets the principal's attention, and the principal's walking over to the officer. I just get up and start heading that way because I know he's, this is about me. So we step through the door and we step around the corner, and the officer's kind of laughing. And he tells me, he says, "There is a sex offender, registered sex offender, with your name and your birthday." And he said when it came up through the system, they didn't know what to do. And so we're kind of chuckling about it, and I'm talking again, telling the officer what I do for a living. He knows. Now everything's clear. And principal is very relieved, and I'm just laughing it off. And one of my friends, who's a teacher there, he he comes walking up with his cell phone and he shows me, he says, "Hey, this is who they thought you were." And they show me this goofy looking dude that you could look up on the National Sex Registry. I was like, I said the principal's name, I'm like, I don't even look like this guy. Like, I mean, the only resemblance we had was that he had a full beard, I have facial hair, and I have glasses, and that's where it ends. And he has glasses, you know. And so everybody got a good chuckle out of that. But afterwards, after the program and seeing my son back to his class and some of the projects he did, I went up to the school office, and the secretary was just apologizing. She's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, especially knowing what you do. I'm just, you know, they're all upset." I'm like, "You know what, just run my IDs again. I want to make sure this is clear." And of course everything was. So everybody got kind of a good laugh. Well, doing what I do, which is, you know, I investigate abuse and neglect of kids. I deal with schools all the time. I'm dealing with families, kids all the time. You know, I live within 1,000 feet of a school. You know, I would be violating so many laws by just doing my job. But my team at work thought it was pretty funny, so they hung a picture of this dude on the outside of my cubicle. And there's several comments on the picture. I'm not going to go into what they are, but I've got a couple nicknames now. And the director of our county agency there was kind of really chuckling and laughing it up, and started telling me, you know, what would have happened if you'd have gone into the county where I work, went into one of those schools and you got flagged. She goes, "They would have called us," and she goes, "I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to deny ever knowing you." So everybody's getting a good chuckle out of that, and it's kind of a good thing. It raised morale a little bit around the office at the end of a crappy week. So kind of unbelievable, though. Kind of ticked me off that some perp took my name and birth date. He's a punk. So anyways, that's what I did Thursday. So kind of exciting. Never a dull moment in the life of Hoosier Piper. Hope your weekend's going well. Until next time, Hoosier Piper.